She knew this day would bring trouble. She just didn't know how quickly the peace would shatter. Aaliyah's hands trembled slightly as she finished packing the worn, heavy duffel bag. Her eyes caught on a small framed certificate resting beside it. A foreign language title, a gold seal, slightly battered. It was a secret she had promised to keep buried. This move, this new school, was meant to be a clean slate, a path straight to the future she had sacrificed everything for. Northwood High was not a fresh start. It was a fortress of privilege. As Aaliyah stepped off the rumbling public bus, the sunlight glinted off the fleet of luxury cars lining the drive. She felt the weight of her simple clothes, the quiet thrum of a world that didn't want her. She lowered her eyes, committing to the plan. Be invisible, keep her grades up, and survive the year. The attempt at invisibility failed almost immediately. In the main hallway, a wall of polished, entitled smiles blocked her path. At the center stood Brittany, the kind of girl who was used to being the brightest, cruelest star in the room. "Well, look what the bus dragged in," Brittany said, her voice dripping with mocking sweetness. Aaliyah simply stepped around them, refusing to engage. This was the first test, and she had passed. Ignore them. Keep moving. But in the crowded, echoing cafeteria, fate, or malice, intervened. Aaliyah accidentally stumbled, and her tray clipped Brittany's elbow. A dark splash of soda blossomed across Brittany's pristine white top. The cafeteria went silent. Brittany stared at the stain, then slowly lifted her gaze to Aaliyah. Her eyes were ice. "You think that's funny? Get on your knees. Now!" Aaliyah felt the heat of 100 eyes, the surge of humiliation. She fought the instinct to lash out. "I'm sorry," she said, keeping her voice low and steady. "It was an accident. I'll pay for the cleaning." "Pathetic," one of Brittany's cronies snickered. Brittany dismissed Aaliyah with a wave of her hand, but her face held a promise of retribution. Aaliyah escaped, the shame burning in her cheeks, but she had avoided the fight. She wouldn't avoid the ambush. It happened later that afternoon, far from the main classrooms, down a deserted, low-lit corridor. Brittany and 3 of her followers materialized as Aaliyah tried to reach the exit. There was nowhere to run. "You really thought an apology would fix this?" Brittany advanced slowly, savoring the fear she assumed Aaliyah was feeling. "You bumped me. You embarrassed me. Now you pay the real price." The verbal abuse started, sharp, cheap, and cruel. Aaliyah stood silently, fists clenched, repeating her inner mantra. Control. Discipline. Don't ruin the future. Then, the conflict became physical. One of the larger boys in the clique moved with startling speed, a blur of motion. Before Aaliyah could fully brace, he slammed his knee into the side of her face. The blow was brutal, a sharp crack that echoed in the empty hall. Aaliyah reeled back, staggering, a sudden taste of copper filling her mouth. The pain was immediate and dizzying, but she did not fall. She did not scream. She simply clutched her head, turned, and stumbled away down the hall, running on pure shock. The bullies were stunned into momentary silence. They had expected tears, begging, and a dramatic collapse. They got nothing. Aaliyah locked herself in the last bathroom stall, her breath coming in ragged, painful gasps. She stood there, trembling, covering her cut lip. The humiliation was total, the despair crushing. She had failed the first day. Slowly, carefully, she pulled her hands down from her face. Her eyes, which had been glassy with shock, hardened. The faint metallic scent of her own blood only clarified her thoughts. It wasn't pain she felt now, but a cold, disciplined resurgence of a long-buried rage. Her inner voice whispered, low and terrifyingly clear, "No more running. Not this time." The sharp, rhythmic sound of a heavy bag being hit, thump, 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 was the only language Aaliyah truly understood. The air in the downtown gym was thick with the smells of sweat, chalk, and ancient leather. This forgotten place was not just a gym. It was her sanctuary and her greatest secret. Aaliyah skipped school the next day. She found her uncle, Marcus, sitting on a bench, taping his hands. He was her former trainer, her only guardian, and the keeper of her hidden life. The moment he looked up, his protective anger flared. "What is that?" Marcus demanded, his voice low and dangerous, pointing at the slight swelling and faint bruise blooming on her lip. "Who did this to you?" Aaliyah placed her gear bag down, avoiding his gaze. She knew the fury brewing beneath his calm surface. If he intervened, their careful facade would crumble, and the stakes were too high. "Please, Marcus," she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. "I have to handle it. You know what's at stake." The words hung heavy in the air. The stakes, not just surviving high school, but the national scholarship. The one opportunity to escape their life and honor the life her parents had wanted for her. The silence was her shield, and she couldn't break it now. Marcus sighed, the anger replaced by a weary resignation. He knew the fight she was truly in, but Aaliyah was not yet ready to fight with her fists. She still held on to a fragile hope that the system might work. Clean, honest, and diplomatic. She changed into a fresh shirt and walked back towards Northwood High, straight into the principal's office. Mr. Davies, a man whose tailored suit looked expensive and whose eyes looked tired, listened with a patronizing calm. Aaliyah presented a clear, calm account of the hallway assault. "I understand your concern, Miss Hayes," Mr. Davies said, tapping a pen against his mahogany desk. "But Brittany is a good girl, from a good family. Sometimes emotions run high." He dismissed the assault as a simple schoolyard scuffle, offering an empty, sugary promise to speak to all parties. Aaliyah walked out knowing the truth. Hope was crushed. The system was rigged. Later that day, the humiliation went public. Brittany had edited the security video footage, carefully cutting the moment the knee struck Aaliyah's face. The remaining clip showed Aaliyah running into the hallway, then stumbling away afterward. The video, titled "New Girl Throws a Hissy Fit," went viral among the students, painting Aaliyah as the aggressor, proving the school's version of events. The isolation she sought was replaced by open mockery. That evening, Marcus didn't try to talk. He only trained her. The familiar rhythm of practice was a cleansing fire. Aaliyah moved across the worn mat, her footwork sharp, her blocks precise. She was no longer a humiliated teenager. She was an elite athlete, moving with a disciplined grace and power that defied her quiet appearance. Every movement, every strike, was focused frustration. "Control it," Marcus grunted from the side. "Let the anger focus the power, Aaliyah. Do not let it control you." She trained until her muscles screamed and her lungs burned, trying to exhaust the crushing despair. Finally, exhausted but resolute, she drove her beat-up car home. She stopped dead in the driveway. The back window was a jagged hole, with sharp shards of glass scattered across the seat. Shaking, Aaliyah approached the car. It was personal now, outside the school walls. She reached inside, pulling out the framed certificate, her prized possession, the one item representing her future. It was completely smashed to pieces. A note was tucked into the frame, printed on expensive heavy paper. Her blood ran cold as she read the words, confirming her worst fear. They knew everything. "We know who you are, champ. Stay down." The game had changed. The bullies weren't just after a schoolyard win. They were trying to destroy her entire life. This was the moment she knew she couldn't keep running. She spent the morning slowly taping her injured fingers. The ache wasn't from a fight. It was from smashing the remnants of the shattered glass in her car into dust. Her focus was absolute, her breath even. The pain was just another fuel source. They want a fight? They just don't know who they're inviting to the ring. Aaliyah returned to school not to learn, but to observe. She realized she was being watched, not just by the bullies, but by others. Brittany walked the halls with a swagger that was too confident, too certain of victory. It was the confidence of someone holding a trump card. Aaliyah subtly started looking for the hole in the armor, the slip-up that would expose the plan. The hardest part wasn't the isolation from the bullies. It was the pain of losing the one person who hadn't judged her. Chloe, the only friendly face at Northwood, now avoided Aaliyah's texts and calls. Aaliyah saw her across the courtyard, eyes downcast, moving quickly away. The sharp, cold realization of betrayal was a deeper cut than the one on her lip. She knew Chloe was terrified, likely blackmailed, but the loneliness was a heavy anchor dragging her down. The setup was swift and professional. In the middle of third period, the loudspeaker crackled. Aaliyah's name was called to the principal's office. Immediately, her heart sank. She knew what this meant. It wasn't justice. It was the trap closing. Principal Davies sat behind his desk, looking genuinely regretful, though his sympathy felt cheap. "Aaliyah, this is deeply upsetting. A valuable piece of jewelry was reported stolen this morning." He paused, letting the silence accuse her. "And we found it. In your locker." Aaliyah denied it, calm and firm. "That's impossible. That wasn't there." Davies sighed, gesturing to the desk. There, lying innocently on the polished wood, was a diamond-studded bracelet. The weight of the lie was crushing. The system, propped up by Brittany's powerful family, was too strong. Then, the final twist of the knife. Mr. Davies brought Chloe into the office. Chloe's face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She wouldn't look at Aaliyah. Davies asked the question, his voice smooth and coercing. "Chloe, did you see Aaliyah near that area this morning? Did she seem distracted?" Chloe trembled, her voice a forced, weak squeak. I saw her near the lockers. Yes, she was there." It wasn't an outright lie, but it was enough. It was the final devastating act of betrayal. Aaliyah looked at Chloe, not with anger but with understanding. She had been forced to choose. "I'm sorry, Aaliyah," Davies said, the lie heavy on his tongue. "In light of the evidence and the testimony of your classmate, I have no choice. You are suspended indefinitely, pending an investigation." Aaliyah stood up, defeated but not broken. As she was being escorted out, she saw it. A crumpled sheet of paper shoved carelessly into the overflowing trash bin beside Davies's desk. It wasn't a note, but a printout of an old group text. In one swift motion, fueled by pure instinct, she palmed the paper and slipped it into her pocket. Outside the school gates, she walked until she reached the safety of the empty gym. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it was from a righteous rage. Aaliyah unfolded the scrap. It was a thread between Brittany and her friends, discussing the plot to frame her. One line stood out, the clear, unforgivable truth of their malice. "Davies will believe anything when Dad calls him." It's a clean shot to get the champ suspended. They hadn't just bullied Aaliyah, the new girl. They had targeted Aaliyah, the champ, specifically to sabotage her scholarship. The injustice was overwhelming. The school system had failed her. The law was bought. Aaliyah pulled out her phone. She looked at the number she had sworn never to call unless it was an emergency. She typed the digits, her finger hovering over the screen. Then she pressed send. "It's Aaliyah." She spoke into the phone, her voice steady and cold. "They know. And now I need your help. We have to move up the date." Marcus was furious. He paced the gym floor like a caged predator, the old wooden boards groaning under his weight. Aaliyah sat calmly on a bench, expertly wrapping her wrists with tape, the white lines overlapping in a disciplined pattern. "You can't go back there, Aaliyah. Not after that suspension." Marcus's voice was strained, filled with fear. "Let me call my old contacts. We'll handle this legally." Aaliyah finished the rap, her movements precise. She looked up at him, her eyes clear. "They destroyed my evidence, Marcus. They bought the principal and blackmailed Chloe. Legal will take months. The interview is in 3 days. The harsh truth settled between them. The scholarship, her life raft, depended on her demonstrating moral and physical control. If she retaliated with violence, or if the fraudulent suspension stood, the opportunity would vanish. She had to expose them, but she had to use truth and defense, not anger. The system is protected by money, she stated simply. I have to fight in the court of public opinion. Despite her suspension, Aaliyah went back to Northwood. She waited until the front office was deserted, slipping quietly into the principal's outer area. She placed the crumbled text printout and a formal, typed letter demanding a public retraction onto Mr. Davies's desk. It was her final attempt at a clean victory. She didn't get far. Hidden by the corner, she heard Davies return. She heard the sound of the paper rustling, then the frustrated curse. A moment later, the electric whir of the shredder violently devoured both the letter and the evidence. The system had rejected her truth entirely. Minutes later, her phone buzzed with an urgent voicemail from Marcus. Davies's voice was on the recording, slick with authority. Tell Aaliyah if she sets one foot on campus again, I will have her arrested. We are done here. Aaliyah's jaw tightened. She knew what she had to do now. She used her phone, quickly contacting the few remaining allies she had in the city, an old gym partner, a friendly face from a local paper, and set her counterplan in motion. Northwood was hosting its Spirit Week talent show the next day. It was mandatory attendance. She secured a last-minute slot, listing her act simply as a discipline demonstration. She then sent anonymous emails to local news outlets, teasing a major, high-profile revelation at Northwood High's auditorium. The final confrontation found her waiting outside the school, her decision made. Brittany and her crew pulled up slowly, leaning out of a luxurious SUV, confident and mocking. Look, the champ is still hanging around, Brittany sneered, her voice heavy with scorn. Didn't you read the note? You lost, Aaliyah. Go home. Aaliyah stood her ground. I'm not going home. Brittany laughed, a sharp, cold sound. Then the bully who had struck Aaliyah stepped forward. He pulled out his phone, and her breath caught in her throat. On the screen was a grainy, high-resolution surveillance photo. Marcus, her frail uncle, alone, locking up the gym late at night. He looked tired, vulnerable. Narration. The blow to the face was nothing compared to this. The terror was instant, paralyzing. They weren't just attacking her future. They were threatening her family. The bully's final text message flashed onto his screen for Aaliyah to see. Don't come to school tomorrow, or your coach pays the price. Aaliyah didn't flinch. She looked the bully dead in the eye, her voice low and steady, filled with a resolve that felt like steel. I'll be there, she said. On the stage. The final countdown began. The time for hiding was over. The stage lights were blinding, white-hot discs hanging above the auditorium. Aaliyah walked out, not in a school uniform or a dress, but in a crisp, immaculate black gee, the traditional clothing of a master. A sudden, deep hush fell over the packed auditorium, followed by a confused ripple of whispers. She was no longer Aaliyah, the new girl. She was the weapon they had forced her to become. The host, a nervous senior, tried to introduce a jazz dance routine. Aaliyah ignored him. She stepped calmly to the microphone, her face focused, her posture perfect. She didn't shout. She spoke simply about dignity, about the cost of silence and the power of truth. She named no names, but every student and teacher knew exactly what she meant. From the front row, Brittany and her clique started a loud, dismissive chorus of laughter and mockery. They were still confident, certain that this was just a pathetic final cry for attention before she was expelled. Aaliyah stopped speaking. She looked directly at Brittany, her eyes holding no anger, only cold clarity. I promised a demonstration of discipline and control, Aaliyah said into the silence. Brittany, would you care to assist? Brittany exchanged a smirk with her friends. She strutted onto the stage, believing this was her final moment to humiliate the champ. "Sure, let's see the dance moves, newbie," Brittany sneered, tossing her hair. Aaliyah didn't reply. She took her stance. The change was terrifying. The quiet girl vanished. Her whole body tensed. Her gaze became sharp and distant, honed by years of brutal training. She moved with an economy of motion that instantly revealed her mastery. Brittany, arrogant and unprepared, tried a quick shove, aiming for Aaliyah's chest to knock her off balance. The climax began. Aaliyah didn't fight back. She fought defensively. She anticipated the move a second before it happened. She performed a flawless, lightning-fast defensive block that deflected Brittany's arm and spun her off balance. Brittany stumbled, trying to regain control. Aaliyah moved, not attacking, but evading, weaving through Brittany's clumsy, flailing attempts to grab her, using only joint locks and calculated pressure points. Aaliyah made Brittany look slow, clumsy, and utterly powerless. The crowd was silent now, transfixed, realizing the new girl was something extraordinary. Then came the moment of justice. Brittany lunged wildly in frustration. Aaliyah used Brittany's own momentum against her, executed a flawless hip throw, and slammed the bully onto the mat. She followed it up immediately, applying a controlled, defensive lock that pinned Brittany perfectly, painfully, to the stage. It was the exact same stance, the same humiliating, inescapable position that the bully had put Aaliyah in 2 days earlier in the lonely hallway. Aaliyah held the pin for 3 tense seconds of absolute silence, the weight of every lie and every betrayal pressing down on Brittany. Then Aaliyah released the lock and stepped back cleanly. Brittany scrambled away, humiliated and defeated, tears of fury streaming down her face. Before the crowd could react, Principal Davies burst onto the stage, his face red with rage. He saw his control slipping away, his career flashing before his eyes. He pointed a trembling finger at Aaliyah. "This performance is over. You are expelled, Aaliyah," he shrieked, charging at her, attempting to physically shove her off the stage. "That is enough. Mr. Davies!" The voice boomed from the back of the auditorium, commanding, authoritative, and utterly silencing. Every head turned, a sharply dressed, imposing man began walking forward, slowly parting the crowd. He was followed closely by Marcus, who held his head high. The man approached the stage, his gaze locked on the frantic principal. In his hand, he carried a polished leather briefcase. The principal froze, his angry momentum dying instantly. He recognized the man. He knew this was the end. The higher power had arrived, and he was here for justice. A single spotlight now focused on the man who had just stopped the entire auditorium. It was Mr. Henderson, the CEO of the national organization sponsoring the most prestigious athletic scholarship in the country. He was the man Aaliyah had called. Principal Davies's face instantly drained of color. He knew he was standing before the source of $1 million partnership, and he had just tried to physically assault the organization's star candidate. Mr. Henderson stepped onto the stage, took the microphone from the shell-shocked principal, and addressed the silenced crowd. His voice was calm, powerful, and utterly decisive. "I am Mr. Henderson, and I am here today to introduce Aaliyah Hayes, not as a student on suspension, but as a 3-time national junior taekwondo champion." A gasp swept through the auditorium. The mystery of the battered certificate, the reason for her silence, and the source of her disciplined strength were instantly clear. Mr. Henderson continued, detailing the corruption with ruthless efficiency. He spoke of the donor pressure from Brittany's father, the false theft charges, the manipulated video, and the principal's illegal attempts to protect funding by silencing Aaliyah. He opened the briefcase. Inside were copies of emails, text messages, and financial logs, the proof of the rigged game. The young woman you saw on this stage was forced to defend her integrity, not with violence, but with truth Henderson concluded. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. Mr. Henderson revealed that the anonymous invitations to the talent show had gone to local news reporters, who were now swarming the front aisles, filming everything. Principal Davies, disgraced and defeated, was quietly escorted out of the building by security. His power, and the power of Brittany's father, was gone. Brittany, still reeling from the humiliation, was utterly defeated. Justice had come for the bullies, not in the form of a physical attack, but as an undeniable wave of public truth. The tension finally broke. Aaliyah felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to see Chloe, tears streaming down her face, rushing forward. "Aaliyah, I am so sorry," Chloe sobbed, hugging her tightly. "They threatened to call the police on my parents. I was terrified. Please forgive me." Aaliyah hugged her back, feeling the immediate relief of forgiveness. "I know, Chloe," she whispered. "You chose fear. They chose malice. There is a difference." Marcus rushed onto the stage and wrapped his niece in a fierce embrace. He didn't say anything about the danger or the fight, only, "I'm so proud of you, champ." Aaliyah was cleared of all charges. Her suspension was instantly revoked. More importantly, her scholarship was secure. She had faced down a rigged system, not by becoming a bully herself, but by refusing to let others define her truth. A local reporter pushed forward, holding a microphone up to Aaliyah. "Aaliyah, what do you want people to know? What did you learn from this?" Aaliyah looked out at the auditorium, at the faces of the students who had judged her, mocked her, and finally watched her triumph. She spoke simply, her voice clear and strong. "I didn't fight them with hate," she said. "I fought them with truth. My strength wasn't just my training. It was knowing my own value and refusing to let anyone else define it." The final narration closed the story. Aaliyah went on to achieve everything she dreamed of, not because she was a fighter, but because she chose dignity over silence. If you're out there struggling, remember the lesson Aaliyah taught us. True strength isn't about the fight you win. It's about the truth you stand for. Don't hide your light. If this story inspired you to find your own courage, hit that like button, subscribe for more stories of justice, and share this with someone who needs a reminder of their power.